We made this.
You're listening to Pick a Disc, the podcast where someone picks a disc for whatever reason they want to, and then we talk about it. I'm your host, Matt Latham, and today I'm glad to bring on Brandi Lukas from the Brandi's Going to Hell podcast to talk about The Darkness's Permission to Land from all the way back in 2003. So yeah, as usual, we talk about all sorts of stuff, including the album, Shock Shock, as well as the songs, even shockier. Is shockier a word? Oh well, I've just invented one. And we even talk about like the live experience and just the impact that this band and the album had on Brandi's life. And before we play the interview, I just want to say if you like what you're hearing, you can follow us on all sorts of places. You can subscribe to us on your podcast apps of choice. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter under Pick a Disc. You can join the Discord if you want to. The links are in the show notes. And you can also support the We Made This Patreon. So if you want to support the network, get a couple of episodes of some of the other shows on there a bit early, you can do. So yeah, that's all the admin done, and the instructions done. So yeah, I mean, I guess that I can just play the interview now and just stop stalling, just because I've just got a bit of dead air to fill and audacity as I watched the little hand slowly move towards the start of the interview. And perhaps I should have given myself a bit more time or less time. I don't know. I can't really guess these things. But we're nearly there. Nearly there. Oh, crap. Yes, start the interview now. Okay, I think one of the benefits... I feel weird saying that I've pivoted to video, even though I've actually started using webcams for at least a year and a half, from almost half the life of the podcast now. But it's always interesting to see the background of the guests. And I can see in the background of my guest, Brandi, at the moment, there's a Queen poster... I'm not sure what's underneath it. And a nice word. I'm not going to repeat the word that I can see in the background, but but it's
Yeah. Honestly, my office is a collection of sorts. You know, I've got racks of CDs to the side of me. I have a Revolver magazine that was a special edition for the band Baroness, which is one of the bands that the company I work for manages. Queen poster, and then like my laminate collection, and I have like, you know, other kind of random collections too behind me.
Yeah, I just briefly noticed. I'm not going to repeat the word on there, but it's like, oh, that's a really nice plate.
Honestly speaking, I learned that word, but from the band that we're about to talk about today. So funny enough.
Yes. Even though it might pop up at some point, so just in case, parental advisory is advised, just in case, because there might be some profanity discussed about in this
Good
podcast.
to know, because. Yes. I have a potty mouth.
It's okay. There's a nice little explicit checkbox I can tick. I can tick the box that way. So yeah, Brandi Lukas is my guest for this edition of Pick a Disc, and why don't we just get to it and tell the listeners the disc that you've picked for today?
Of course, the disc I picked is "Permission to Land" by The Darkness, which was released July 7th, 2003.
Yep, and it was released July 7th, but it was released in the US in September. Of that year.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm assuming you was in the US at the time when that was released. So, was it before I ask that question? Why have you picked Permission to Land?
First off, Matt, I want to say thank you formally for having me to talk about this, because you know there's this quote that's from Almost Famous. You know, the only true currency in this bankrupt world is sharing something with someone when you're uncool, and it's like, you know, the fact that you give me this platform to talk about it is rad. So. I found out about The Darkness in a really kind of interesting way, and this record in particular, being in the right place at the right time as a budding teenager, you know, getting ready in the morning for school. In America at the time, there was this program called, you know, VH1's music video morning wake up. And I think it's been defunct since 2015, but it was like a staple, like when I got ready for the morning. Anyway, this riff caught my ear, and I ran to the room that the TV was in. And in front of me, I saw this cut to a snippet of a man with pink hair sliding across the floor in front of flames. And I was like, what the fuck? Oh, excuse me. What the hell is this?
No, feel free. Feel free.
And when I saw that, I proceeded, because it was one of the, just like a recap snippet thing. So it wasn't the music video being introduced or, let out. It was just a moment in time. And I watched that program every morning for the rest of the week until that song came back on, because like at the time, like that was 2004 when that happened. I think maybe the end of 2003, beginning of 2004 was like when my fandom started. But I watched that program every morning to wait for that song to come back on. And then the rest was history, because once I found out who they were, and that song, I kind of dived in deep. But the internet wasn't really like as big as it is now. So I guess I didn't really know how to research it very early on. But then once I knew who they were, I dived in. Yeah.
So which song was it there? So which song? So I'm assuming it's The Darkness.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well, song? It was I Believe in a Thing Called Love.
Of course.
That was like their biggest single in America. Yeah. So I saw that video and it changed my life. And that's why I wanted to talk about it. Like that moment in time was very defining.
So, but why Permission to Land? So why specifically this album of theirs?
It was like my introduction to theirs. It's the record that made me a music fan for life. I was always a music fan, like growing up, but this record was something of my own at that time. Like I have kind of like an example. So a lot of people really take a giant crap on band Greta Van Fleet. And I say that band's going to be some 13 to 14 year olds first band that introduces them to rock and roll, to have that genre be something that they own at that current moment in time. Mm-hmm. And The Darkness's Permission to Land was that record for me that, when you're young, you gravitate and explore music for the first time. And that band and that record was something that I was like, this is what I love. Like, this is like kind of what I grew up on, but for my generation, like what I can relate to in real time. You know what I mean? So that record was something for me in that sense.
It's like the album where you can kind of click and think, oh, okay, I feel like I've got a musical identity now. So you've got albums and
exactly.
So you have albums or kind of things that albums or songs or artists that you might have liked in the past. And for me, I think I was 22 before I think I found that album. That album that kind of think, okay, I feel like I can class myself in a kind of genre type thing. So or I have a favourite genre now, and it leads you down to a certain path. And I quite like that when you was talking about like when you find like particularly young, like, well, teenagers, like particularly 14, 15, in the time, like the impressionable time, discovering like bands and stuff.
Exactly.
And the tendency to perhaps, I'm not going to get too far into it, like the tendency perhaps for older generations to crap on newer generations, to use the term and stuff, because the Darkness are a band that when they came out, and we'll talk about this a bit more in a second. It was very easy for people to mock them for being a throwback, or oh, they're just doing what these bands were doing in like 20, 30 years ago. The same people that were applauding a band called Oasis, even though they were doing the exact same thing for the Beatles, just about a decade beforehand, because that's how music works. But like, you have like kind of bands like The Darkness, and it's quite it's funny to talk about in there, because this album is nearly that 19 years old.
God, that really ages me, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, considering people still claim it a throwback, even though it's pretty much a third of the lifespan of the genre it's covering. Oh my God, I feel old now. Of the covering, but it's like an easy entry. It's like you've got. For example, I only discovered the artist Biba Doobie, who's very much like kind of 90s grunge aesthetic, and she listened to like the Juno soundtrack, but it basically kind of like Liz Phair kind of music and stuff. But I can see that she's got a very young fan base, but I can see a lot of people like between like 15, like all the Gen Z, listening to Biba Doobie and then discovering the influences influences of them, and then finding a whole bunch of kind of almost like grunge from like the Seattle period and delving into that. And it's a nice entryway to that. It's the same way I think people that probably listen to Darkness probably never really listened to AC/DC or Led Zeppelin or that kind of hard rock type stuff, and probably found it was their gateway into it. But then because you kind of discovered that band, there it is, that they're your kind of entryway in, and you have that kind of you have that sentimental attachment to that band that led you to more kinds of music in that way.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, at that time, in 2003, 2004, I was I loved rock from, you know, from a very early age because I grew up around it in my household. And, you know, at the time that was popular, you know, was the White Stripes, 3 Days Grace, Blink-182, Emo Screamo. And I loved those bands and I still do. But like when the Darkness, like Permission to Land came on my radar, I was like, this is what I've been, you know, kind of yearning for, in a sense of, you know, that sound from the past that is now in the present. Yeah.
So for those who are listening going, I don't know who the Darkness are, or need a refresher of who the Darkness are. The Darkness are a British rock band formed in Lowestoft in England in 2000. The band consists of Justin Hawkins, his brother Dan Hawkins, Frankie Pulane on guitar, and Rufus Tiger Taylor on drums. Which is their current lineup, I think, but the lineup was slightly different, I think, when this album first came
Ed Graham was Ed Graham was on drums, and and it's switched up over the past years, but that's the current lineup right now.
And they came to prominence pretty much with this album that we're talking about, Permission to Land, and it was backed by a few some singles. For example, Grown on Me, Get Your Hands Off My Woman, and Love's Only Feeling, and a song that you may have heard of called, I believe, a thing called Love, which I've said in the past, they're kind of staples, like indie disco staples, particularly with like indie bands that I've spoken about, where they kind of have like the Arctic Monkeys have I Bet You Look Good on the Dance Floor as kind of indie disco. This is the Darkness is, I believe, in thing called Love, kind of expand, like kind of is like ended up being like a disco track or a kind of club track that gets played along with pops. It's become part of kind of like the club culture. Like if you go to a cheesy pop club, like you'll have Can't Hurry Love by Diana Ross, and then you'll have the Darkness, and then you'll have S Club 7 coming and stuff. It's become that's how much in the culture it came in, and they had their kind of their imperial phase was around this era, so that the height of their popularity was around this era as well. And it's just quite anyone who can't remember that time, the Darkness were at one point perhaps one of the bigger bands in the UK. In 2003, 2004, they headlined Carling and the Carling Festival, which is Reading and Leeds now. In 2004, that's how, just after like a year after the album came, that's how popular they were. Permission to Land, said earlier, it was released on the 7th of July in 2003 in the UK, but it was released in September in the United States, when simultaneous releases just weren't possible at the time. The album topped the UK albums chart, and it reached number 36 on the American Billboard 200 chart. 5 singles that was released that we mentioned earlier. I Believe in a Thing Called Love was the most successful, reaching number 2 on the UK singles chart. In the lead up to this, I thought, okay, which song stopped it from getting to number 1? And this was this first charted around the 4th of October 2003. So which meant it was at number 2 around that time. And that was around the time of my 18th birthday. And and then I looked at the chart around my 18th birthday, and I think it dropped down to number 5. But the song at number 1 was "Where Is the Love" by the Black Eyed Peas. So that was that was number 1 on my 18th. I didn't even
really realize or know that. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so that was around that time. So yeah, so I remember that fact of it being.
I mean, that's a good song too.
but that stopped it from being number 1. But that was number 1 for about 3 or 4 weeks over here. So so that and that was probably their only chance of getting a number 1, I think. In that, but in terms of my history of the Darkness, I remember listening to the album. I remember liking the album. I actually own a copy of the album on CD. So for the benefit of the tape, I'm holding up the CD now, alongside also the only other one I've got, which is One Way Ticket to Hell. waiting to
Nice.
hell.
Yeah. I forget how
Um,
many copies of Permission to Land I have. I bought like the Japanese version and whatever back in the day. Like, I have a few, the clean version. But sorry, go on.
yeah, but yeah, so Permission to Land is an album I know quite well. It's not one that I probably list as a favourite, if I'm honest. But then I kind of remember whenever I remember it, or occasionally I'll probably say, oh yeah, and re-listen to it. I just remember how much I actually really quite like it. So this is one of those rare episodes where I actually am fully aware and have a key history with the album as well. And my kind of origin story with the Darkness, I can't remember exactly where it was that I heard them, but I'm pretty sure it was, I believe, in a thing called Love, and I'm sure it was because of Radio 1, BBC Radio 1, because I used to listen I used to listen to that a lot of the times, and a lot of time, and we used to have it on in the sixth form common room. And, well, it was usually a case that people would just stick Radio 1 on, and then occasionally someone would try and sneak over, switch it to 1 extra, and then someone would switch it back to Radio 1 again. And then, and it was, played all the time on there, and I was like, oh, I quite like this. And then a few of the friends in sixth form at the time were kind of into the growing indie boom at the time, because this was perhaps a couple of months before I would hear somebody tell me about the Killers on Radio 1, and that would be my first kind of almost transformative moment, as you was alluding to earlier. So that was the first of two that I could think of. So it's around that time. It was around that time because I think the Killers were just coming up at the time. The White Stripes around that time as well, Franz Ferdinand. So there was kind of a good kind of indie guitar boom that was happening. But then the Darkness stood out, and there was two opinions. There were people that really kind of genuinely liked them, and people who just kind of pushed them off as kind of
either
a
joke or really liked them. It was kind of no gray area in between. It was either a love or hate, I feel with a lot of people who listened to the record.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, and I think quite a few people don't. And one of the things that perhaps took me a while to realise was that I think particularly the Darkness, if they didn't then, they kind of embraced, and they are very self-aware of what they're doing, of what from the gate. There was always been they never saw themselves as trying to be serious, even though they took not being serious seriously. So they knew that they kind of was always aware of what they probably be perceived as.
100%. And to piggyback off of that idea, I think this first record in a way is very full circle to what the leading single off their recent record is, which is called Rock and Roll Deserves to Die, off of their record Easter is Canceled. It's about rock and roll being too the same, too boring. What are you offering that is original or different? And I think that is a very full circle moment, because this record, when it came out at that time, was just really different from what was cool, right?
Yeah.
It was had its own kind of funky, weird, it's a freaking weird album. It has its own identity for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I usually quote reviews. Sometimes I quote reviews in the reception bit, but in the lead up about half an hour before we start recording, one of my favourite things to do is see if Pitchfork reviewed the album. And Pitchfork reviews are generally hilarious and quite strict and stuff. And I was very surprised. Yeah, I was very surprised that for a Pitchfork review written on October the 9th, 2003, gave it an 8.4. Pitchfork gave The Darkness Permission to Land an 8.4 in 2003. I'm just going to let that settle in for a second, because I'm pretty sure they kind of slated Kid A by Radiohead initially, and the previous the 2 episodes ago spoke about how much the Pitchfork review hated Reputation by Taylor Swift. So, but then again, that's almost there's about 15 years between those two. But the Darkness review on Pitchfork has quite a lot of interesting viewpoints in it, which is very Pitchforkian, for lack of a better term. In the first paragraph, the reviewer goes, "If you're convinced that the Darkness are a bad post-po-mo joke unfairly unleashed on the world, turn back now. Listen to the new Books album and feel safe in the knowledge that most of the Pitchfork staff probably thinks I'm nuts." Which immediately I thought, okay, I'm actually going to listen to this. And the Pitchfork review talks about that there's always been quote unquote updates to rock. and they quote like the White Stripes, Foo Fighters, Queens of the Stone Age, the Smashing Pumpkins, and the reviewer who's of the name Scott Plagenhof is the name of the reviewer, to credit him. He says that the Darkness, to be fair, aren't that much different. And I'm going to quote this bit here. The difference is that the Darkness dropped the tortured artistic and write paeans to the unbridled joy of love, where Jack White would be more inclined to grumble about the death of the sweetheart and shine in a world that cares nothing about nothing that is long term, in the liner notes of a record he made with his ex-wife. So we're going back to the point where kind of like the Darkness kind of embrace the joy and fun of music, embrace that side, whereas you have like bands like, for example, Smashing Pumpkins, The Darkness, The White Stripes, kind of like embracing with all due, they can completely bask in the misery, the misery stuff, because some of the best artists have like basked in misery. I mean, you can just mention the name Robert Smith and just leave it there. But I think particularly when that kind of stuff was popular, the Darkness just brought back the kind of glam rock fun.
Yeah, they're fun. They don't take themselves. They take themselves seriously, but not too seriously, because they're very proud about the music that they make. But there's this essence of listening to music and having fun while listening to it that is like really awesome. Like I can totally get the the sado kind of like boohoo aspect of listening to music, but when you listen to music and you have something fun to listen to or weird to listen to, it kind of like changes your mood in a way, and it's an album that really perks up your mood, I think.
yeah. And I'm the last thing I'm gonna read pretty much the entire final paragraph of this Pitchfork review, because I think it does a good job of summing up, I think, the album and particularly the circumstances around it, because and you'll find out why in a second. Tellingly, America's #1 movie at the moment, School of Rock, is built on the premise that rock is a relic relegated to history books as something kids need to be taught. After all, they're not learning about it on the streets. It lovingly regurgitates classic 70s guitar god cliches for examples. When it comes down to it, the best youth culture is dangerous and offbeat and audacious, and currently rock is none of those things. It's no wonder that for this week, for the first time, the top 10 singles on the Billboard charts are all hip-hop and R&B. By comparison, rock is middle-aged. It has lost its youthful swagger and instead acquired the sheepish vanity that comes with expanding waistlines and thinning hair. Perhaps it was inevitable, but if a midlife crisis is on the cards, I can't think of a much more entertaining one than The Darkness. Wow. That was 18 years ago, so...
Yeah, I mean, geez. Yeah, that's pretty that it hits the nail on the head, and I kind of alluded to a couple of points too that I didn't. That's really cool that you brought up that review, because Pitchfork's usually what did everybody say on Pitchfork, and I actually never read that. So that's really cool to hear that.
I do find it there's an interesting contrast to be made, that Pitchfork is usually seen as the po-faced serious White Stripes, Smashing Pumpkins kind of serious stuff, and it's a Pitchfork review embracing the hilarity and the fun of that bit. But I mean, it's a good point though. I think we're coming from, from the UK, the North. There's a rise of R&B. There's the rise of garage. The kind of guitar rock was a bit kind of stagnant, but then the Strokes release Is This It? The Killers were just on the verge of coming out. Over here, Franz Ferdinand, Razor Light, Baby Shambles, all kind of kicking off the guitar stuff, and The Darkness probably got carried in that wave, but also it felt wrong to class them as that, because they were sounding like nothing at the time, but they sounded like a throwback or a celebration, a throwback, and I can kind of see how they kind of made a kind of unique stamp at the time. So from that, with it being kind of different to everyone else, before we talk about the songs themselves, I want to ask you, did this affect your music taste, and did it lead you towards other albums, other artists, either from before and after? Or?
I think once I listened to this band, I went down a wormhole for sure of similar artists. I kind of really ate up a lot of the support acts they had on tour with them throughout the years. it made listening to this record really made me do a lot of research, and it really kind of like changed my life in that sense. I don't know if this is classified as a personal story because I totally have notes about this, but
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
this like, you know, between discovering that record and like seeing them live, it really made me consume music in a different way instead of just listening to it and becoming, you know, just relating to the lyrics and, you know, this and that. It was more a discovery process. Like, what can I find that else is cool? Because it's out there and and you know, you're not always going to find it on VH1. And that's when I just became this like creation of the internet and just soaked up whatever I could and whatever I could find. And I'd follow people's blogs and this and that. And, you know, music discovery back in 2003, 2004, 2005 was way different than it is now. You didn't have algorithms feed you stuff. You just kind of clicked through people's MySpaces, saw what their featured songs were because they wrote for cool magazines back at in the day. And then you learned from it from there. And it you know, they are a staple, and honestly there's not much else like them out there, but it led me to discover music I never would have otherwise heard. You know, because of the darkness, I discovered the Wild Hearts, which were not new at the time at all, but they were new to me, and that opened up that whole other kind of can of worms into that genre of music. And you know, I discovered Ash because of the darkness. I discovered so many bands that they had on tour with them. What were some other ones? Scissor Sisters, like just so many different kinds of artists that I probably would have never discovered because I would have just been kind of going with the flow with what was cool, you know. That they kind of opened this gateway of curiosity for me in a bigger sense.
Okay. I mean, quite interesting to say. I think like bands like Ash, I think it kind of predate the darkness by a couple of years.
No, totally. But they're not known in America. Yeah. America is interesting because everything in the UK could be huge, but it might never stick in America at all. So like they helped me discover a lot of artists that may not be new, but may precede them, and then kind of dive into those, you know, wormholes of music and discovery as well.
Yeah, I think I always find that's always a topic that's come up a few times on the podcast already, and it's always something that's always fascinated me in terms of who's more known and stuff. I mean, like earlier today, I was just listening to a podcast that was talking about Kylie Minogue and like the entry for. I mean, she's not massive in the US, but she's potentially a couple of hit wonders. Whereas like she's had like she had number one singles in 5 decades over here, and one of the few artists to do that.
I know her one hit, but I know of Kylie Minogue because I'm pretty sure Goldie Looking Chain made like a funny remark. I know, but I'm serious. Like I would have never discovered Goldie Looking Chain if I never listened to The Darkness, because I went down that wormhole of like English artists. And like, that's like the beauty of it. When you find something that like just sparks this thing within you where you're like, what else is out there? Like the possibility, like you have to want it though. And like, I wanted it. I was 14, you know, I had nothing else to do. I had a computer, you know, I was like, it was like a playground for me, you know. Not very many friends. I had a computer and I had like, you know, my Permission to Land record and Curiosity. So it, you know, I'm kind of like a rare breed. You know, I wasn't cool. That's for damn sure.
But yeah, it's a slight similar but slight tangent. Like my second first gig after so a couple of episodes ago, which is the latest on time of recording, it's the latest episode. I mentioned that my first proper gig was Steps when I went with my sister and my family in like 1999. My second first gig was in 2004 where I saw the Killers. And my third first gig will be in 2009. So I have kind of 3 gigs. But when I saw the Killers in 2004, they had a support band, and their second support band was a Norwegian band called Surferosa, and seeing them live, I was like, oh wow, this sounds really great, and that ended up me going down a rabbit hole of like, oh, what do they sound like? And for a split second, Pandora worked in the UK, and and through that I discovered the Sounds, and to this day, the Sounds, one of my favourite bands. Dying to Say This to You is one of my all-time favourite albums. But then I ended up on a massive kind of spread, like hunting thing for kind of Scandinavian rock, and there is a period of my Scandinavian kind of rock band phase. So like I was like Briskeby, Sahara Hot Nights, Melody Club, all these kind of like Scandinavian things, and it was just like because of the internet trying to track stuff down. So I can fully understand like the whole kind of like, oh god, I love this sort of thing, I need to find stuff. But yeah, so it was just me kind of like, oh, who are this band and stuff, and eventually MySpace was saying, if you like Briskeby, you'll like this kind of other kind of European stuff, and then you might like this Dutch band called Kresik and stuff. I was like, and it's great when you suddenly find something, and you're just on this kind of like rabbit hole, like you can, I don't know, some sort of amateur sleuth, just like uncovering this conspiracy of music that's been held from you that the mainstream radios just can't or won't just show you and stuff. It's great when that happens, and you're just discovering new stuff that you like. So I just imagine you just kind of these gates opening and suddenly a wave of all these British indie rock bands just falling on you. So like,
oh, absolutely. Like because of the darkness, I became fans of a lot of other bands too, like the Cribs, which are completely unrelated, but like because I was introduced to, English, British music, like it really like opened up my my taste, and honestly the Cribs are probably one of my number twos under the darkness, and it's just like whatever you relate to. Yeah.
The drawback being is that then suddenly you try and talk to other people about these bands that you've discovered, and like your friends either don't understand, don't know, or think you just think that you listen to bands with silly names. But
yeah. No, that's actually great, because like it kind of ties into, in your show list, there's this part about personal stories, and I actually have a little bit about that, like saying that, being a darkness fan when you're a teenager really sets you up for having thick skin, because the amount of abuse I got from my peers in middle school for being a fan of that band, and even into adulthood, taught me a lot about myself, and as far as integrity and identity is concerned, because nobody really knows who they are or were, or whatever context you want to put it in. But if people knew, they were just like, they laughed at you. But it's like, okay, cool, whatever. Like it could have really, I feel like a lot of people would just conform and just drop whatever they were interested in, because like that's, teenagers are bullies at the end of the day, and I just kind of really held this like badge of honor with what I liked, and didn't really care what other people thought, and it worked out for me in the long run.
Yeah, I mean again though, I think it's a different time as well, where like where you were pretty much, the majority of music was what's big and just on the radio or whatever's like successful and stuff. And nowadays, I mean, technically it is, but it's consumed in other ways, whereas like it's what's big on TikTok or whatever's big on like Instagram or on Spotify and everything. But it's a lot, I think, because of how music's changed, I think it's a lot more freeing, so people can kind of be, I think, slightly more accepting of other people's music taste now, which is great to see. I just wish it was like that 20 years ago, but yeah, so it's, I think it's, but I think in terms of, music can kind of tie you into like an identity, and is a key part of who you are and what you like, and kind of, I feel bad for saying this, but for like someone's personal brand, which sounds really kind of hokey to say, but it is. I mean, like people have got kind of like an aesthetic, a personality, a vibe, a quote unquote vibe, and music is a key part of it. Well, it is for me. I believe it is for yourself as well. And and it's I think people I think it takes a while for other people to realise that. It takes a long while for other people to realise that about you. So, and then, so like 10, 15 years down the line, people are just like, why on earth did I bother taking mick out of people that like certain things? I had friends who were in the subculture called Grebos, which I am not 100% sure. I don't know whether that is a derogatory term. That I don't know what term or not. But the culture was kind of like the pop punk culture, and like people were. And that they were like attacked, like the worst thing. They were like bigger targets than goths. We didn't have any goths at school. We had the Grebo kind of pop punk kids that listened to like Green Day or had skateboards and stuff. And they eventually they just let water down ducks back more or less at the end. But then like jump 10 years, the people that used to take the mick out of them for liking that kind of music are posting stuff on Facebook going, I can't believe that Blink-182's album is 15 years old. And like, you going, you like yelled at my friend for liking that. yeah,
for sure.
So,
it's crazy.
Yeah. So we're dragging the mood down, but let's embrace the fun that the darkness had, because that's what their kind of ethos is, and talk about some of the songs. So when you think of this album, which songs jump at you immediately?
Okay. Well, I mean, let's just talk about, I Believe in a Thing Called Love for a second, just because it is their biggest one from that record in America anyway. This one kind of jumps at me because like it was my first one I heard, and I actually have a kind of fun story about it too. When I was young and I heard they were doing a contest on the radio for this song to win tickets to the show in Philadelphia. So I called in at 14 and sang the chorus of the song with 3 other people. And I won.
Oh, wow.
And that was great because what's really interesting is that show in Philly on April 2nd, 2004, sold out within 96 seconds, I think, at the time. So I would have never gotten tickets anyway because it sold out. So that was kind of like a really cool moment.
Wow.
So like Permission to Land, I Believe in a Thing Called Love is it's a great song. Like, and the thing about this record is that it has so many wonderful love songs, and love is cool. And it's something that a lot of people should embrace too. But also this record has so many weird songs too. Like they have some of the best music videos from that time as well. To go on some highlights, it's tough because prepping for the show, I was driving back from my parents and I listened to it on blast from front to back, which I haven't listened to this record from front to back in a while because I usually have it in a playlist on shuffle. And I still remember all the words, I'll say that. And it just made me think like, oh my God, why was I singing songs about shooting up when I was 13? I didn't even know what those kind of drugs were back then. It's just like, wow, what a time capsule to kind of be reminded about. Cause like, you really can't relate to that, but like the imagery and the words and everything was just so captivating at that time, especially as like a young person. I will say my vocabulary was immaculate, like at that age, because they use such cool words. That's not normal in, American language to use, some of them being curse words. But yeah, a lot of the songs are great. I mean, like and like a lot of them have kind of like double entendres and like hidden meanings and secret meanings. Like, for example, Growing on Me sounds like a love song, but really, like, is it about genital warts? I don't know. That's what the rumor was on the internet. Did I ever research it? Probably like 15 years ago on I started when I was like talking to a bunch of like other Darkness fans on the internet, but it's just really interesting. That. And I think a lot of songs are very relatable too. For example, Stuck in a Rut. Don't we all just want to escape from home in a way, like our hometown, and like get out of that mold? I think that was kind of like a very defining song as well. Like being a teenager in southern New Jersey, like a very unexciting suburb to grow up in. You just kind of want to escape and leave that mold. And this record made me voraciously want to do that. And, between discovering them and seeing them live, like it really made me, Stuck in a Rut was kind of like this song that made me get out of that rut, because I voraciously kind of consumed that and made it my life moving forward as far as like music is concerned. So Stuck in a Rut's like a very kind of like, it's that anthem that makes you want to leave that rut, like, because it's so relatable. Yeah. And holding my own is also like what? Double entendre for masturbation. Like it's just like this record is just a deep dive of so many cool moments. And I know we can't go over every song, so just looking at the tracks in front of me right now, like those are just some pop out moments that I can highlight.
What I'll briefly do, if I was going to jump back to I Believe in a Thing Called Love, because I think we probably need to kind of do a slightly deeper dive on that, because it is massive. As I said earlier, it's kind of
my go-to karaoke song.
Yeah, and I think the amount of people karaoke trying to do the is it falsetto? Is it? Mm-hmm. Is it? I'm not. Yeah, trying to get as high as Justin Hawkins can do, and failing. I mean, I can't get that high. But people attempt. The most people I've seen trying to attempt that. I'm trying to figure out just what it is about it that makes it such a pop. It's simple, but it's simple. It's like verse, hook, verse, pre-chorus. Very good sing-along chorus to it. It has that kind of very. It doesn't. The guitar solo doesn't go on too long. It's an anthem. It's a rock anthem that like it's just like a feel-good song. Like everybody wants to sing about the tragedies of love, but that song really makes love feel like it's something special in a way. I mean, just like think when it punches through your speakers in a way too. Those just beginning riffs just is a grab, and the verses in the chorus are just. It's introduced, to borrow a phrase from the Naughty's Naughty podcast, that dun 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 dun, that kind of intro riff. It's one of the. It's.
It's funny. I remember playing this record in college too. I lived in the International Building, and when I played that song, the first thing somebody said was TNT AC/DC, and I was like, oh my God, you're kind of right. It just sounded a little bit like that. But no, it's a great beginning.
It is one of those. I think it's one of those songs that is instantly recognizable. You just hear the first few notes and immediately know what it is straight away. It's one of those few songs that can do that. I think one of the contemporaries for guitar riffs, or if not a riff, just guitar lick, it's the intro to Mr. Brightside by the Killers, where you just hear the da 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 da, and it just immediately it's like it's that introduced kind of theories. Like if you're again going back to kind of like the club nights, or if you're at a kind of family party where there's a DJ stuff and the bits where people are sat down on tables and people are still trying to get on the dance floor and they go on and off and stuff, and it's usually like occasionally you'll get songs that people go and then run to the dance floor because they have that kind of classic introductions. Sweet Child of Mine by Guns N' Roses is another one. Summer of '69 by Bryan Adams. They've all got that kind of intro that it's almost a call to arms, so that when you hear it, the people that love that song, that want to dance to it, suddenly go and then run to the dance floor. It's that kind of call to action style of intro, and then it also has that kind of mold of having the potential to air guitar, which I will say I am a master of, and people who say otherwise can Fuck off. Yeah, I am. Whilst I might not have done the karaoke, I definitely have the air guitar to this. But yeah, it's that kind of like party anthem where it gets. It's either encouraging people or it's carrying on a flow from like what's happened before and stuff, and or at least it'll get a slightly different generation onto the dance floor that probably will probably on the dance floor for the Motown section of songs and stuff. I also think it's got quite a few catchy refrains that will get stuck in your head. So there are certain parts of it that will stay in your head. So the touching me bit will just like if people are not a fan of the song, they'll know that bit. They'll know the chorus, or at least it's again when you've had one or two or six drinks, people will do the first bit and then they'll suddenly try and go. Just the second line, yeah, a bunch of people suddenly tilting their head up and shouting that bit in a club and stuff, and it's got that kind of ability, that kind of lots of different moments that will capture those things. Again, I've lost count how many times I've seen people sing that chorus at like 2 a.m. in the morning, in the cheesy pop room of a club and stuff.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely a song that everybody can feel, if you feel a part of it, because a lot of people know the words. It's not that hard to learn because, you know, it's a fun, easy song and it's catchy as hell. And that's, you know, that's what successful music is. Like, it's what's the, you know, what if you're reading a newspaper and you hear this song, it's going to make you do a double take. Like, what was that? Like, it's got this moment that kind of draws you away from whatever you're doing, and it really pulls you in.
Yeah. One song I'll be want to mention, which one isn't one that you mentioned earlier, but I'll get back to them in a second. Because it caused a ongoing in-joke at school where if anyone picked up anything that wasn't theirs, that belonged to you, you'd go, "Get your hands off of my pencil case, motherfucker!" Yeah, or "Get your hands off of my lunchbox, motherfucker!" And that's the explicit box tick now. And I'm going to assume that this is the song that corrupted young Brandi's head with all the nasty swear words in it.
Yeah, I mean, "Get Your Hands Off My Woman" is like a really great song. It is a head banger.
Yeah.
And it really, I think it's just like the classic male song, just because like every man doesn't want anyone touching their woman at all. It's just like a really fun song. And it's just so sassy. Like, yeah, I totally learned the C word from that song. And, you know, I remember printing out on the internet, this is so dorky, this like door, you know how you can hang, you know, when you go to a hotel, it has like a thing that hangs off your doorknob. I printed one out that was made by like a fan site back in the day, you know, put it on my door when I was 14, and it says "Knock, motherfucker." Like, it's just it's just a great, it's just a wonderful song, and it's fast paced, and it really just gets you going.
Man, I was got this. If I haven't, they say, "Get your hands off of my doorknob, motherfucker."
Yeah.
Oh man.
It's so awesome how clever they are as lyricists, because it's I think it's also something that wasn't done at that time. They're just so smart in how they write songs and have things rhyme, and their metaphors, and I just think they're the coolest when it comes to that, because it's like, I would have never thought of that, and the way you did that is just so smart. That's why I always am really, they're just wordsmiths in a way, and I think that's fun about it.
Yeah, talking about the metaphors, if we go to "Growing on Me," because that was another single, which Genius says is a deliberately ambiguous song which can be inferred to be about, as per the official response by Justin Hawkins, a sweet lady woman that you will never fully fathom or understand, but you love her so much that after a while it doesn't matter. Alternatively, the lyrics can also fit the description of an STI, most often believed to be genital herpes or warts. And I can remember someone, I was in the sixth form common room and they was playing this album on the CD player, and yeah, and one of the guys goes, "Oh, you know it's about dick spots, don't you?" So what? It's about dick spots. Is that the technical term? Because so I can't remember who it was, but I remember someone using the term dick spots. And yeah, but again, it's. I mean, I think if you're unaware, you'll think it's just like a nice kind of like romantic song, and as soon as someone says, "Oh, it's about STIs," you go, "No, it's not," and then you listen to it and you're like, "Shit,
it could be.
Yes.
It very well could be." But like, I think one of the greatest things about people who write music is when you can write something and it can be interpreted in many ways. So yeah, it's a love song on the surface, and it might be also about STIs too. But the fact that like it can mean a bunch of different things to different people, and I think that's rad. And the metaphor or the double entendre, whatever it's supposed to be about, really at the surface, it is a really great love song that really it captures kind of that feeling that makes you feel kind of helpless, like or like vulnerable, and but also kind of like celebrating it because they're growing. You can't get rid of this person in your head, and it's just a great love song. That's one of the reasons why I love it so much. But I think as a Darkness fan, it's kind of like that like other kind of meaning to it just kind of underlies, and you don't really hyper focus on that as maybe like a naysayer or somebody just trying to bust your balls would.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, and again, the chorus is, again, it's got a catchy chorus to it, but I actually really like I kind of like the pre-chorus to this as well, because it's the build-up to it, and the fact that they're different as well. I'm always a fan of kind of more verbose or songs that have a bit more vocabulary, so they're not just repeating the same things over and over again. So the pre-chorus has been different work as well, and I do like the first one is like, "I'm being punished for all my offences. I want to touch you, but I'm afraid of the consequences." I mean, possibly creepy when you think about it, but also if you take take the more wholesome aspect of it, it's the idea of if you got someone that you kind of close with, that you kind of got feelings for, but there's that fear that if you revealed them, then and they reject you, it's going to change that relationship forever.
Yeah.
Or if you discover nasty spots somewhere, and you it's just, but
you're part of me now, and I only got myself to blame, right? So we all know what those two meanings could be. It's either
and punished for all my offences, which is again is a mixture of not being careful, or again some slightly creepy when I start to think about it, that I don't want to really delve into that much, but yeah. So one of the songs I actually quite really like as well, and I think it's quite simple, but it always sticks in my head, and it's mainly there's a line in the chorus. I'm a kind of, so it's kind of background. I'm kind of like a recurring guest on a podcast called Shipwrecked and Comatose, which covers the BBC sci-fi comedy Red Dwarf. And one of the concepts they have is quotable dwarf. And Mark, one of the main hosts, always says that like you sometimes have comedies and you have lines that you keep quoting or something. Like, for example, he'll always, if he's about to go out, he'll go in front of the mirror and quote the cat, going, "How am I looking? I'm looking good." Mm-hmm. I quite like, occasionally, sometimes I'm really crap at it, but I sometimes like to play badminton, and at the place I work, there's a kind of hall that we can use, and we have sometimes staff play badminton, and in my head, I always seem to, I mean, in the song, it's Tuesday badminton, but in my head, I always kind of, and no one knows what the hell I'm talking about, but part of me going, "Oh, I've got Friday badminton," and yeah, and no one else knows it.
Night is a great song. It really is. And I totally feel that, because like this record came out when I was in middle school, right? So like Friday Night, with all these extracurricular kind of like mentions in the song, was totally like a play on words, like just popped up in my daily kind of vocabulary, and people were just like, "What the heck are you talking about?" And
yeah, I can imagine a 14-year-old US girl saying, "Oh, I've got bridge club."
Yeah.
I have bridge club. It's fine. Like, what? What the hell's bridge? I have no idea.
Yeah, and it's like, it just really brings you back when you with the lyrics, because geez, it's kind of like when you're in high school, it's the verbatim take of like having a crush in your club or in your class or whatever. And it's just really funny, like looking at the lyrics now and reading them again, even though I know them by heart when the song comes on. But it's really cool. And the really cool thing about this song too is they had this like really, it was like an unreleased music video at the time. I remember that was never released formally. I think it's on YouTube now, because I did, as a rabid fan and also an absolute geek, got all the DVDs imported from England for all the singles. But this one never had like a DVD. So that was like on the internet. It's cute. It's kind of like a play on a continuation of I believe in a thing called love, the reoccurring spaceship, and they get dropped off in an island and they're dancing, and it's cute. It's like a fun love song, but also silly with the different kind of activities. It's catchy though, so it's cool.
And as someone who someone who kind of loathes to even think about Christmas beforehand, we are recording this at the aft end of October, but I'm going to briefly mention Christmas because this song isn't on probably the album that I've got. I don't think it's on the album that you've got, but there was a European edition that was released around Christmas time, which had the song "Christmas Time, Don't Let the Bells End." And I'm going to think anyone who's listening to this is probably going to listen to this in the lead up to Christmas, because it will be December when this comes out. And I only want to briefly mention Christmas Time because I think, aside from, I believe, in a thing called Love, the other big Darkness song that gets played here all the time is "Christmas Time, Don't Let the Bells End."
Absolutely. I went to England, which I'll talk about more when we talk about me seeing them live. And it was to see The Darkness. And when I went there, everybody was like, "Oh, what are you doing here?" Because I stick out like a sore thumb. I'm an American woman in England by myself. "Why are you here?" "I'm here to see The Darkness." And the first thing everybody said to me, "Oh, they have that Christmas song." And I was like, wow, I didn't expect everybody to like, because my relation is, "Oh, The Darkness, I believe in a thing called love." In England, everybody's like, "Oh, The Darkness, Christmas Time, Don't Let the Bells End." So
I mean, I've talked about it in previous episodes around the Christmas time, and I think on other podcasts about the phenomenon which is Christmas music, particularly over here, and the Christmas number one. Having those Christmas staples is a massive thing, and that is quite interesting that people immediately go to Christmas time, because it makes sense actually, because I think Christmas time is played a lot more. It's a lot more fun. It's come to the point where it's probably played a lot more than I believe in a thing called Love is, but it's only in the month of December or November.
I mean, I forget it. Really, it goes on it goes back up on the chart like number one every Christmas season, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But in terms of, I think particularly when it first came out as well, it was like kind of slightly different. It continued.
Here's my copies.
Are those
Don't Let the Bells End.
So are those the singles and the DVD?
So the singles. So I don't have the album that has the bonus track of that on it. I do know all the B-sides to this record, but I don't have the one you're talking about. But I do have the DVD and the single CD. Yeah. Sorry, I just had to pull that out.
Yeah, and yeah, it's just one of those simple Christmas songs, but it is, if The Darkness decided to do a Christmas song, and they kind of do the tongue-in-cheek thing. For example, the first lyrics, "Finding joy and surprise at the kisses of the spies," and it kind of subverts the kind of usual Christmas songs. At the time, it was kind of new, it was kind of interesting, it was kind of funny, and it's just one of those legacy things that's lasted. And every year, VH1, Magic, or those kind of music things here will put a list of like the top 100 Christmas songs. Guaranteed, this is going to be around the top 10. I want to think it's around the 6 or 5 mark. This will always appear in the top 10 now. It's one of those. It's up there with it's up there with Slade. It's up there with Wizard. It's up there with Mariah Carey and Wham and all that. And those are probably the only songs that could beat it.
Yeah, it's like one of, it's funny because it's like it's obviously very popular in England, but how many Christmas songs have cursing in it? Like, for real, like and the kind of the double meaning too, because like Bell's End is, I think, very strategically placed in there. And it's funny because like after, my husband is English, and one time he called me a bell end, and I was just like, what? Because we don't say that in America. So,
oh man.
And then I was like, oh, I get it now. Like, with the Christmas song, because like we don't say that here, so it just went over my head.
I admit, that term is one that I think some of my friends use with each other quite a bit, and it's a proper kind of British word and stuff. And you know what? I never actually, until this very moment, realised that's the joke. I've only just realised that.
You only realised that? Oh
that
my god! Then my job here is done. No, I'm kidding.
Oh my god! How have I never gotten that?
It's really humorous in a way, because like it's such a popularized Christmas song, but it has like that kind of like dirty part about it, and that's what also makes it great. And the fact that like I think some of the best Christmas songs are the ones like that that are about broken hearts, and like this is one that is really about like your love not being around like during the holidays. And I think we all feel that at some point. And it's just like you feel joyful around this time, but there's something missing when the person you love is not around. And it's just a beautiful Christmas song in that way.
Yeah. I just learned something else as well. So when asked about the meaning of the song on a television special, Hawkins stated, "We managed to get bell end into a Christmas song without it getting banned. Oh, and the term ring piece." And I'm like, wait, what? And then
wait, what's that one?
Ring piece. So don't let the bells end, just let them ring in peace.
What's that mean?
Ring piece is, let me just click on the Wikipedia article.
Oh wait!
Oh my god!
Is it a cock ring?
No.
Okay.
Okay. So clicking on the Wikipedia link on the Darkness song "Christmas Time Don't Let the Bells End" on the word ring piece takes you to the Wikipedia article for the anus.
Oh god, that is great! Thank you, Matt. I didn't even see. What kind of fan am I? I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
That's why I love them. They're just like, they really kind of just want to get those little moments in that, are inappropriate. And that's like what's rock and roll about it. I love it.
I feel like I'm being corrupted by this episode of Picking This. I'm going to check. Yeah, this is episode 76. Anyone listening to episode 77 is going to say, "Ring it," because pick a fucking disc. I feel like I'm being corrupted.
Well, I'm glad I'm here to corrupt you with my favorite record, Matt.
So, I'm never going to listen to that song the same way again. So, moving on from that, the reception of the album. Mixed. I think it kind of, again, critically, I think it was mixed between the kind of audience, as we've discovered earlier, but it had widespread acclaim by critics. Metacritic, it's given it a score of 79 based on 19 reviews, and there's like a lot of fours. There's an 8.4 in Pitchfork. NME gave it 7 out of 10. Entertainment Weekly gave it a D. Q gave it a 3. So it's not rave reviews all the way through, but I think that's at the time. I do think that from the looks of it, from what on the research for this, there were quite a lot of blog posts that were like kind of reappraising or revisiting it throughout like 15, 16 years ago and stuff, and they say that it kind of feels dated, but it kind of was dated when it came out because of the kind of era it was invoking. But I think that's giving it a sense of timelessness that you get from, I don't know, period dramas like almost. And Okay, I feel bad for saying I feel bad because it's one of my favorite TV shows. Like Mad Men is kind of like timeless because of the period it's in. And I feel
Yeah, I
like
love Mad Men.
I feel like Darkness is kind of not the Mad Men of music in the way that I think it's kind of prestige music, but it's in terms of how it captures a time period isolated from when it came out to when it's set, kind of thing, and manages to kind of invoke that in a kind of unique way.
Yeah, it's like unapologetic rock and roll, and it has, you know, a lot of songs back in the day, like rock and roll songs that, you know, in the 80s that were popular, have really witty lyrics and have these kind of like moments, and that whole record has all of that, and but in its own defining way, because I think it actually pushes it a little over the top more than some of the classics, and that's what's so great about it, is that they're doing their thing unapologetically.
Exactly, yeah. In addition to its chart success, Permission to Land also provided The Darkness with 2 high-profile music awards, Best Rock Album at the 2003 Kerrang Awards and Best British Album at the 2004 Awards. They also won the awards for Best British Group and Best British Rock Act. It was voted 49th in the 50 Greatest Albums of the 21st Century in Kerrang, which was then later referenced in the song Whichever Way You Want to Give It by lead singer Justin Hawkins' other band, Hot Leg. In 2005, the album was ranked number 356 in Rock Hard magazine's book of the 500 greatest rock and metal albums of all time. The album's also included in the book 1001 Albums You Must Hear Before You Die. In 2016, Metal Hammer ranked Permission to Land 63rd in their list of the 100 greatest albums of the 21st century, calling it one of the greatest debut albums of all time. So it's interesting to see that, considering the amount of kind of Marmite, like love them hate them aspect that the public gave them, that it was like it's got some critical legacy to it, which is quite nice to see, particularly when you revisit it and thinking, oh, actually no, this isn't that bad, it's a lot of fun, and then you kind of see particularly the people who gets paid to critique it are starting to share that thing as well. So Brandi, have you ever seen The Darkness live?
Yeah. So they were my first concert, which is, you know, like I've said before, you know, one of my defining moments. Sang the song, won the tickets, went to the show. I went with my dad. I wasn't old enough to go to a show by myself. So they were my first concert. And from that moment forward, like, I wrote about music for fun. I researched music. I attended as many shows as possible, and, you know, made my life about music, and it's my career now. And like, because I heard them and I saw them live, that's the natural progression it took, because I just wanted music to be a part of my life in that sense. And as far as like other kind of like live stories, Jesus, a year or two, it was before the pandemic. I was curious and I wanted to tally how many times I've seen them. And it was hard, because like I usually do take photographs, and I was able to kind of like collect stubs and everything, but I kind of had to really like go back. I think I've seen them 22 times, which sounds insane, but it's cool, because like, you know, there's this moment where I only saw them live once. They never toured America for their second record, because they broke up and, you know, did separate things. And then they came back. And when they came back, I was like, I'm not going to miss this opportunity ever again, because there's this, when your favorite band breaks up and you just don't, you have this sadness of not ever hearing new music from them again. You kind of like kick your ass into gear to make sure you don't miss them again in the future, because any time could be the last time. So when they came back to America for their third record and onward, I really kind of saw as many shows like as I could in an X amount mile radius. So the East Coast is where I usually see them the most. So yeah, 22 times. I got to see them in Munich because like I in 2015, I started working for the music management company Q Prime, and 2 of our bands were playing at Rock of Area. So I saw them at Rock Bavaria. Muse and Metallica were playing. So that's what I was there for. And I got to see them there, which is really cool. And one of the other really rad moments is in 2016. And it's really crazy how the ebb and flow of everything goes. I saw them in 2016 in London. That's when I went to London by myself for the first time. And that's where that Christmas time story comes from, with everybody hearing that or asking what I was there for. And that's how they know them. I went to their fan convention, which is super nerdy, I know, but It was kind of like that same moment that I had back in 2010 when they broke up, where I was like, I can't miss this. Like, what if this might be the only other time I will ever be able to get to do something like this. So I went, and they were playing at the Indigo at the O2. And at the same time, the Red Hot Chili Peppers were playing. So Red Hot Chili Peppers at that time were signed by my management company. So I went to 2 shows in one night. And this is why I love the synchronicity of things, because like if I never became a fan of The Darkness and I never went to that fan convention, I never probably would have had this spark and desire to work in music. And at that show, at that night, I met my husband there. So like, it's just such a crazy story that I honestly think if like everything didn't happen the way that it did, my life would be so different. And it just really, and like being able to talk about it today. And then, sometimes I do think about it in retrospect. Like if I never became a fan of this band, I probably would have never had the life I have now, between my career, my awesome husband, and like just, over time, like I've developed a friendship with the band. I would say it's more on the level of acquaintance and casual friendship, not like, I'm more friends with their techs than I am the band themselves. But like if I was 13 and were to tell myself that I would be, acquaintances or friends with them, or, I would have said whatever. So like seeing them live was like a huge part in my life, because I would have never met my husband. I would have never, had this life that I gradually got to. Working in music is the coolest, and I really am in debt to like discovering this record for it.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, tracing back all sorts of different things. It's one of the things I fully understand when you try to think, oh, if I didn't do this has happened and stuff. But like, for example, I don't think I would be doing this podcast if I didn't write Buffy fanfic in the year 2000 on a message forum, which is a story I'm not going to go into.
Oh my gosh.
If people are really interested in that kind of story, let me know, and I might reveal it at another point. But
yeah. And on another note of seeing them live, I have been to a lot of concerts in my life. First of all, I work in music. I go to a lot of concerts every year. I have a book of just ticket stubs through years and years. I have a whole section of ticket stubs behind me. Concerts are my thing. And after seeing so many, I will say they put on a damn good show. I was ready to curse there. They put on a damn good show. Like, wow, like their showmanship, like they could be playing to 75 people, which I've been in rooms where they did that, or they could be playing to a stadium, and they'll put on the same level of performance for everybody. And it's cool. It's theatrical. It's funny, costume changes, stories, and it's just fun. Like I still haven't seen a band that, when you go see a high production show at a arena, yeah, that's cool because all the money's put into the production. But like the band is that, like, they don't need production because they just put on a really fun show. Like, I'll still say they're my favorite band to see live. Like, and I know it might be a little biased because they're my favorite band, but like they do cool and random stuff on stage that I don't see any other artists doing.
No, again, yeah, no, fully.
Have you ever seen them live?
I've seen them once.
Where? When?
I've seen them once.
What record?
So they if I open up, because I don't have a book of ticket stubs because ticket stubs stopped being a thing for some silly reason. But I've got the spreadsheet, I've got a spreadsheet of pretty much every gig I've ever been to, and it was in, because I've got the set list open somewhere. It was on the 9th of December 2017, so about 4 years and 2 days from the launch of when this episode comes out, at the O2 Academy in Birmingham. So I've seen them once, and I've seen them just that once, and I think it was, I can't remember what the album was that came out, because The Darkness is very much a band that you mention to people and go, oh, I thought they broke up, and they went, well, yeah, and I didn't think they came back together, and and like people kind of know them for that song, but then don't realise that they're together. And there was playing in Birmingham, and I was like, do I go? Am I going to know any of the songs that they play?
When did you see them again?
2017. So.
Right. So October 2017, they released their record Pinewood Smile. So you saw them a little before that?
After. So this was December the 9th.
Okay. So you did say that. Sorry about that. Yeah.
So this was the setlist.fm says the tour was called the Tour de France.
Yep. Yep.
But I was there going like, so I know the first two albums, and I was like, oh, am I going to, no. So I listened to, I think it was quite a short amount of time from buying the ticket to that. It was probably only like about a month or something. So like, and at that time, I think I had other gigs to go to, and like it's more or less, it's like cramming for exam. I always think of prepping for a gig is like exam revision. So I always refer to it as gig revision. Where you kind of like doing last minute revisions of like, oh, what's going to be on the test, and you just try and listen to as many songs as possible, hoping they turn up. And stuff. And it's like, I was looking into some of their other albums and everything, and trying to think, I have no idea what they do. I think there's like a This Is Darkness playlist that was on Spotify as well. And eventually, when I got to see them, so the songs on the albums, they had one song from One Way Ticket that they played the whole night, which was One Way Ticket, which threw me for a second. So that there was in others they had a song called Making Out, which isn't attributed to an album on set list.
Yeah, Making Out is a B-side to one of the singles on Permission to Land. Permission to Land like has really amazing B-sides. Like that could be on a record. Like they're some of my favorite songs.
Yeah. They had one song from Hot Cakes, which was Every Inch of You, 2 from Last of Our Kind, Barbarian, and Open Fire, only 4 from Pinewood Smile, which is All the Pretty Girls, Japanese Prisoner of Love, Solid Gold, and Southern Trains, and 9 from Permission to Land. I'm guessing they know why people are there and their Imperial stuff. So considering it was meant to be touring that Pinewood Smile album, and they only played 4 songs from that album, played 9 from Permission to Land. Well, actually, it was 8 and Christmas Time, because they
because it's Christmas time.
Yeah, because the encore, because they pretty much the last 3 songs on the main set were Stuck in a Rut, Get Your Hands Off My Woman, and Growing on Me. And for the encore, they came with Japanese Prisoner of Love, and then they did Christmas Time, and then they closed the encore with I Believe in the Thing Called Love, which and that So, but I was generally surprised at how much of this album they played live, and I was like, oh, okay. So I'm assuming that they're not stupid enough to realize that people are going to be there for the new stuff.
I think they're very aware that they know they have a very hardcore fan base, and they're going to play the one thing I'm really bummed about is that Easter is Canceled came out when the pandemic hit, basically. So I was really stoked to see that from front to back, because I've been going to 22 Darkness shows. Like I was really excited to hear an album from front to back by them, and then have the best of, set after. But I think they really do tap into that. They know that the people that are going to keep showing up every time are the people that embrace the first record. Like, and I think any artist in whatever part of their career has enough I can't think of the word, they realize your fans are your number one, and you really should cater to them in a bit. And I think that any band that does that and are very aware of where they are now, where they were before, will do that. And, you know, playing songs on Permission to Land is their staple, right? Like their new records rule, but like it's cool. Like it's just a great record. And I think that they super serve their core fan base for sure. Cause like, I mean, it's also the songs that aren't that popular on the first record that they play, which technically, if you're a one-hit wonder band in America, you wouldn't play. But because they have that core fan base for that record, like everybody knows those songs who's coming for that record. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the band in general.
Yeah. And one of the takeaways I got from that was that I think I was partly feels kind of bad for not expecting too much, but then I was genuinely surprised that one, how polished they were, how healthy Justin Hawkins looked as well, and just how well there was kind of together. And I mean, we haven't gone down to it. I don't really want to go down to it, but like Justin Hawkins went to rehab at a certain point. It's one of the key things whilst it was broken up and stuff. And so, and I think he's a lot healthier than he was in the past and stuff. All of them looked really good. They all looked kind of, and they was just so polished, so well done. There was just the show was just well done considering it was just an academy venue size. Yeah, and I kind of left thinking I was expecting to go, oh, it'd be nice to go and just to see him and just have a. And so I was hitting, hopefully they'll play a few songs from Permission to Land. And I left thinking at some point I might go and see him again because I really did enjoy that live show.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, they take their, it's their job, right? They take it very seriously, and like they really do put their blood, sweat, and tears into it, and their health too, because you can't do that stuff. Like you can't do handstands on stage if you're not fit. Like it's just, it's just how it is. And I think they put a lot of pride into their upkeep and their performance for the greater good. Let's rock and roll. You got to save it somehow. Yeah. Or keep it going.
So if people have only listened to Permission to Land or have only just listened to it because of this episode, and they're interested in where to go next and which album to listen to, where would you recommend they go?
Okay, I'm going to get nerdy for a second. So Permission to Land is great. I think if you're a Darkness fan, you should really check out their second record too. It's like this beast in itself that has so many Darkness staples. I feel like those two records came so kind of close together that is the Darkness. And you have to listen to One Way Ticket to Hell and Back. It's just a brilliant record. It's beautifully done. There's great rock anthems on it. As far as their newer stuff goes, I think a lot of Darkness fans, if they listen to this, are going to give me a hard time. But I think Pinewood Smile is their best record since like classic Darkness sound, an ode to like Permission to Land. I think Pinewood Smile is great. So
I did like what I heard when I listened to that.
It's something very special. I think it really kicks back to the original
hard, sound,
good rock sound. Yeah, it's a cool record for sure.
We're going to take you back to 1977, but also in 2003. So it's kind of weird that you're throwing back to a throwback if you think about it. But no, yeah. I did. I can't remember the last time I actually listened to it. I think it was probably around the time I saw them live actually. I have listened to Permission to Land since then. It's one of those that I keep forgetting exists sometimes, admittedly, but then I'm like, oh yeah, I've not listened to that for a while, and then kind of like, oh yeah, I keep meaning to. why do I wait so long to listen to the album? But so
that's the list I would do it in. I would do it Permission to Land, One Way Ticket to Hell and Back, Pinewood Smile, and then consume the rest of it. I mean, like the recent record Easter Is Canceled is weird, but it's cool. But like I could go on and on, but we're talking about Permission to Land.
And I think as we're getting up to the end of our chat, and it's 1 hour 35 on the on the
sorry.
record. No, it's fine.
I'm sure
it's
you
fine.
can cut a lot of it.
So as getting up to the end, we're asking for the very important question now. The most important question, which is the song for the Spotify playlist. So, for those who have not listened before, what this is I asked Brandi to pick one song off the album to be immortalised forever on the Spotify Hall of Fame playlist. I can't veto it, so whatever she says goes. So, and the song that she will be, and that song will follow the Kate's choice from last episode from the Metallica Blacklist, which I forgot to put into my spreadsheet, and I have to add in when I edit the episode. So which song are you going to be following the whatever choice that Kate made for the Metallica Blacklist?
This is going to be really cliche of me, but I have to add, I believe in a thing called love. Even though it's one of the songs I skip now because it's just ingrained in my brain, like I think it's the classic song. It's a beautiful love song, and it's going to be that hook, line, and sinker to like really grab you into. It's going to relate to everybody, and I think that it's an important staple for people to discover the band through, for sure. Because like I could give you a hardcore song, like, Black Shuck is one of the greatest song one, album ones ever, in my opinion, other than like Led Zeppelin's Good Times, Bad Times from their first record. But it's I gotta go with I Believe in a Thing Called Love. I'm gonna be that guy.
No, that's fine. No, that's fine. It's fine. I
don't want to be that obscure, pretentious prick on your show. Like, I'm just gonna call it Black and White. Like, that's gonna be the song on your playlist.
But I think as a choice goes, I think particularly as well as I think you said earlier, is that particularly in the kind of lineage of moments in life that led you to other things. I mean, it says like, without I Believe a Thing Called Love, that 14-year-old Brandi spent a week trying to find that song.
Yeah.
You said you would not have seen The Darkness 22 times. You would not have decided just to go to London. You would not have met your husband. You would not have the job you are now.
I would have not dedicated my life to music, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Eat, sleep, breathe it.
Yeah, and that choice is fully justified, and I can see people going, oh, I went for the single, but I mean, and one of the key things on this show is that I'm always interested in the personal stories that people have with music, and I think that's one of the biggest ones we've had on the podcast so far. So if people have an issue with I Believe in a Thing Called Love, give it a listen, and then
they can talk to me.
Yeah,
if they have a problem.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. You can talk to me in the darkness community. Yeah. So, and with that, we've now reached the end of our chat, and it's reached the end of our chat. So, if people want to find you and your podcast and give you a listen, where can they find you?
Oh yeah, I'll do it all right now. I'm Brandi Lukas. That's Brandi with an I, Lukas with a K. I do a podcast called Brandi is Going to Hell, and I interview bands big and small. It's one of my passion projects, because like during the day I market music for a music management company called Q Prime, which is awesome. You should check out our roster. But I do a podcast called Brandi is Going to Hell. It's on every place you can stream. And I also like talk about my 5 favorite new records that come across my radar, like before every show. And I unbiasedly listen to music that's been released, like every single one that comes out within that span. So give me a listen. At Brandi Lukas everywhere on the internet. I'm more active on Instagram if you want to follow me there.
Yeah, no. So I've listened to quite a few of the episodes as well, and there's an interesting mix of different artists and actresses and all sorts of different creatives that you've spoken to as well. And funny enough, we spoke about
Thanks,
Instagram.
Matt, for listening.
I think interestingly as well, I think I do listen to I follow quite a few podcast stuff. There was a time actually, I think it's how I discovered your podcast actually, where there was a point where
I was going to ask you, where'd you discover it? Because I know you started following me when I was releasing a lot of episodes earlier in the year.
There's I have a habit sometimes just like the hashtag music podcast. I'll sometimes just go through and the space. Yeah, I've discovered quite a few previous guests have discovered through that way as well. But I don't know what it is. But I think there was a reel. I think it might have been the Penitent Man episode. I don't know whether you actually did a sponsored ad or something, because that was used for about a week or 2 weeks. That was whenever I went on that hashtag, it was basically going, I'm so stoked talking to the Penitent, and that was like that would just jump up. That was jumping up all the time, and I was like, okay, so someone's better.
Yeah,
got an ad
who's
budget or
this
something.
annoying girl?
But yeah, I think I found for that. But yeah, because I think at some point that I think it was real that you had advertising episode get popping up as well. So I think that's how I discovered you originally. So
Cool, awesome.
So yeah, Instagram works for podcast promotion, doesn't it? So but yeah, and with that, I was going to say, Brandi, thank you ever so much for devoting your time to come on, and for me to revisiting Permission to Land. I felt like I was an 18-year-old again.
Yeah, like I said, thank you, Matt. Like, honestly, I never really had a platform to talk about this like nerdery with anybody. So thank you for giving me this moment to talk about my favorite record. It's really cool.
You've been listening to Pick a Disc, and I've been your host, Matthew Latham. Our theme music is Pump by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com. Pick a Disc is hosted by the We Made This podcast network, and you can find them on www.spreaker.com/user/WeMadeThis. You can find the Pick a Disc show site on www.spreaker.com/show/pickadisc. You can find us on all the usual social media type places like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter under Pick a Disc. You can also email us on pickadisc@gmail.com. Until next time, happy listening to all those discs that you are picking. Goodbye.
Hello everyone, this is Tony, Network Chief of We Made This. As you know, our podcast network brings together a brilliant assortment of talent who talk about all kinds of pop culture content, such as the episode you've just listened to, or maybe you're just about to listen to. We're not going anywhere, but we'd love to keep the lights on for even longer if you're able to support our network on Patreon. For just £2 a month, you get your name in lights and the satisfaction of knowing you're helping us produce more great audio. And for £3 a month, you'll get your name in lights, but you'll also get access to an exclusive bi-monthly podcast from the We Made This talent pool on podcasting, pop culture, and, well, you tell us. We'll take your suggestions. For less than the price of a coffee per month, you can help keep We Made This going. Just head to patreon.com/We Made This. That's patreon.com/We Made This. And get the ball rolling. Now, back to your scheduled programming. Elsewhere on We Made This. Chucky Vision.
I've been on some Chucky forums, and there is a lot of hate about Chucky being woke, having a homosexual agenda, how it's ruined the franchise by making it too gay. And I'm like, really? How can you possibly suggest that it's ruined the franchise by being too gay when Seed of Chucky is a thing?
And even if people, like, I know some people, like, I mean, Seed of Chucky is quite a debatable film, but, like, even Bride is very camp. People should have known the sensibilities of this franchise ages ago.
Free with this month's issue.
The editor, Mark Sutherland, who's a cunt.
A notorious man.
Yeah, he's the man that ran the magazine into the ground. He opens the issue with a really fucking cringy editor's letter.
Oh yeah, he does.
Which says, for the first 8 months of the year, the alternative nation was depressed. UK garage and pop shite was ruling the charts, and our music was being pushed off the airwaves and common room stereos across the land.
Oh, Jesus.
Now, I looked into the alternative music scene of the first 8 months of 2000. Already released that year, there had been Primal Scream's Exterminator, Blood Flowers by The Cure, Suicide Pact You First by Therapy.
Movie-versaries.
The highest grossing film in the case of Avatar. I don't think anybody ever considers it popular, but everybody saw it, which is really weird. It's this strange case of this film that made so much money, pushed special effects forward so much, and it isn't based on any intellectual property. Not directly anyway, but it has zero cultural footprint. Nobody talks about it.
Yeah, apart from the whole visual thing, right? Like,
yeah.
Like it's impossibly mediocre. It is so middle of the road. It's not even bad enough to be spoken about.
Check out all of these shows and more on the We Made This podcast network.